What if the secret to raising a focused, emotionally strong, intellectually capable child had nothing to do with tutoring, educational apps, or getting a head start on reading? What if the answer was hiding in plain sight, in the daily rhythms of ordinary family life in Japan? Because researchers who have studied early childhood development across different countries keep arriving at the same surprising conclusion. Japanese children are outperforming many of their peers in focus, memory, and self-regulation, not because of pressure or academic drilling, but because of something far quieter, something most Western parents have been accidentally skipping. Let's talk about what's actually going on. A 2024 study out of Tokyo Medical University followed thousands of children across their early years and found that those raised with 6 consistent daily practices showed up to 40% stronger cognitive performance by the time they reached age 7. Better memory, sharper attention, and more developed problem-solving skills. And the parents who raised these children weren't spending more money or more time. They were just doing things differently. Small things, counterintuitive things, things that challenge a lot of what modern parenting culture tells us to prioritize. Here is what those 6 practices actually look like, and why the science behind each one is impossible to ignore. The first practice is one that looks remarkably ordinary from the outside: hands-on sensory exploration. Water, sand, clay, mud, real dough. Cooking beside a parent, digging in a garden, working with everyday materials that have texture, weight, and resistance. Research out of Nagoya University has shown that when young children use their hands to explore and manipulate physical objects, multiple brain regions activate simultaneously. The sensory system, the motor system, and the problem-solving networks all fire together. Scientists call this integrated learning, and it produces neural connections that are stronger, more flexible, and more lasting than anything a screen or electronic toy can generate. A 3-year-old pressing their hands into clay is doing something neurologically significant. Japanese parents don't reserve this kind of play for special occasions. It happens every day, in small ways, woven naturally into ordinary life. Let your child help knead bread dough. Let them scoop soil in the garden. Let them pour and mix and squeeze. It doesn't look like brain development from the outside, but that's exactly what it is. The second practice is something Japanese families treat as almost non-negotiable, and it isn't a technique or a program. It's sleep. Deep, consistent, protected sleep. Children between the ages of 1 and 5 in Japan average between 11 and 12 hours of sleep each night. Research out of Osaka University has confirmed what neuroscientists have been saying for years. Sleep is not downtime for a young brain, it is the single most important window for consolidating what a child has learned during the day. Neural pathways strengthen during sleep. Memories move from short-term storage into long-term memory. The emotional regulation systems of the brain get organized. Japanese parents don't let birthday parties or family dinners override bedtime. The consistency is the point, because it turns out that even one night of shortened sleep measurably affects a young child's ability to focus and regulate their emotions the next day. Not occasionally, consistently. Many parents treat bedtime as flexible, assuming that an hour here or there doesn't matter much. Neuroscience tells a very different story. Sleep isn't a luxury. It's the foundation everything else is built on. The third practice is daily time in nature. Not once a week, not when the weather is nice, every single day, regardless of whether it's warm or cold, overcast or sunny. Japanese children are taken outside to parks, gardens, wooded paths, and open spaces, where they can dig, climb, collect, and simply wander. Research from Kyoto University has shown that time in natural environments directly lowers the stress hormones that interfere with healthy development of the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for focus, decision-making, and impulse control. Children who spend regular time outdoors in unstructured natural settings show measurably longer attention spans than those who don't. There is something about uneven terrain, living plants, an open sky that a manufactured playground simply cannot replicate. Japanese parents don't view outdoor time as optional enrichment. They view it the same way they view food and sleep, a daily necessity, not a weekend treat. The fourth practice is where many modern parents feel the most resistance, but the research on it is among the most compelling. In Japan, children under 3 are generally not given any screen time at all. For children between 3 and 6, exposure is typically capped at around 30 minutes per day. To put that in context, American children in the same age range average somewhere between 4 and 6 hours of daily screen time. Studies conducted in Tokyo using MRI imaging found that children with heavy early screen exposure showed physical differences in brain structure. Reduced white matter in the regions tied to language development, literacy, and higher cognitive function. These are not theoretical concerns. They are visible changes on a brain scan. The American Academy of Pediatrics now recommends no screen time before 18 months and very limited use after that. Yet most families find this guidance almost impossible to follow. Because screens are convenient, they buy time. They keep things quiet. Japanese parents choose the harder path because they understand what's at stake in those early years. Every hour a young child spends passively watching a screen is an hour. The brain is not building real connections through movement, conversation, exploration, and play. Young brains are extraordinarily sensitive, and the habits formed in these years leave marks that last far longer than most people realize. The fifth practice is one that many parents genuinely believe they're already doing. But there's an important distinction that changes everything. Japanese parents prioritize deep, undivided, face-to-face conversation with their children. Not being in the same room, not talking while doing something else, full presence, eyes, attention, and genuine responsiveness. Research from Tokyo Medical University found that the volume of real back-and-forth conversational language a child is exposed to before age 5 is one of the strongest predictors of brain development, vocabulary, and later academic ability. And the critical detail here is that passive exposure doesn't count. Hearing voices from a television or a podcast playing in the background has no meaningful developmental benefit. The brain needs to hear language, process it, and respond to it. That loop is what builds the circuits. Something as simple as describing what you're doing while you fold laundry together, or asking your child what they notice on a walk, or sitting on the floor and genuinely following their lead in play. These moments are doing far more than they appear to. Being physically present while mentally somewhere else is not the same thing as being truly there, and a child's developing brain knows the difference. The sixth and perhaps most quietly powerful practice is what Japanese parents intentionally choose not to do. They do not push early academics. No flashcards for toddlers, no pressure to memorize letters or numbers ahead of schedule, no structured drilling. The early years in Japan are treated as a time for building foundations, not rushing outcomes. This is perhaps the hardest principle for many parents to accept, because the cultural pressure to get children reading early, counting early, and performing early is genuinely intense. But study after study has supported this philosophy. Research consistently shows that children who spend their early years in play-based, exploration-rich environments outperform children who received early formal instruction once they reach school age. Their brains arrive more organized, more emotionally regulated, and genuinely more ready to absorb formal learning. A 2022 review published in the journal Early Childhood Education found that children who engaged in more unstructured play before age 5 demonstrated stronger executive function skills at age 7 than peers who had been introduced to structured academic content earlier. The counterintuitive truth is that slowing down in the early years produces faster growth later. Trusting the process of play is not falling behind. It is building the foundation that makes everything else possible. So here's what the Japanese approach really comes down to. Give children real materials to touch, explore, and create with every single day. Protect sleep like it's non-negotiable, because it is. Get outside in any weather. not as a reward, but as a daily rhythm. Limit screens drastically in the early years, even when it's hard. Show up with your full attention, not just your physical presence. And resist the pull toward early academics. Trust the process of play, exploration, and connection. None of this costs money. None of it requires a special program or a perfectly structured day. What it requires is a shift in perspective, a willingness to trust that the slow, simple, deeply human things are still the most powerful things a parent can offer a growing brain. If this gave you something to think about, share it with another parent who might need to hear it today. And remember, a strong brain isn't built through pressure, it's built through presence.